Assalamu alaikum. I'm going to show you guys how I learned how to deal with practically any street fight that is fist to fist as a Muslim man. And I'm going to show you guys how I did this in only a few months so that you guys can see quick improvement. So I trained at one of the best gyms in the UK, and I just felt as though that the gym wasn't enough because it wasn't giving me what I actually needed. And I started having obviously a lot of problems. I still felt scared. I still felt like, you know what, when it came to fighting and when it came to sparring, when it came to all that kind of stuff, I just wasn't prepared. So I'm going to read off the doc that I have made for you guys to look at. You can see it on your screens because although I can fight, my memory is not that good. So let's get straight into this. The problem that I was facing was the fact that the gym just wasn't enough. And there was a lot of things that they weren't teaching me that I felt that later on, obviously now, in terms of myself looking back at what I used to know, there's a lot of things that I would have taught myself that I did not know back then that I definitely needed. And then, obviously, past me, ended up getting injured. I was out for like 4 years because of my hernia. And I just started to feel weak. I just started to feel like, you know what, if I go outside, I'm a Muslim. If I go outside, one day I'm going to get married. This is obviously past me. Now I'm married. But if I go outside and let's say, for example, somebody starts on my wife or starts on my daughter, etc., whatever it might be, or starts on my mum, then I am not going to be able to protect them the way that I should be able to. I felt weak. I was like, you know what? I need to make a change. So I decided to make that change. And this is how I fixed it step by step. So the first thing I did was, because I wasn't able to go to a gym, I was still injured. I took out my phone and I started to watch the professionals, started to watch people like Gabriel Varga, I started to watch people like Canelo in terms of boxing, I started to watch people like Saenchai in terms of Thai boxing, all these different kinds of fighters so that I could start to pick things up from them and so that I could actually start to learn. Start to watch a lot of tutorials, a lot of stuff like that. And I started to utilize the one thing that I was able to do, or the one thing that, you know, was at my utilization at the time, which was shadowboxing. And this is later on, I actually found out that Inoue, the 4-time boxing world champion, he actually recommended this a lot. And he says that a lot of people need to start focusing more on their shadowboxing because it's a very useful tool. And it was a very useful tool in terms of for myself and being able to reach the kind of current level that I'm at. So what did I actually do? There was a 3-step process that I followed. The first one was I started to work on my offense. The second one was my defense. And then the third one was my conditioning. So those 3, offense, defense, and conditioning. That's literally it. There's no more, there's no less. Everything that goes under those categories, that's what I worked on. But it was literally summarized into those 3 points. And this helped me go from good at the gym, because when I used to go to the gym, coming from a boxing background, I was better than them at boxing, but I was not better than them at Thai boxing. And this helped me go from someone who was okay at the gym to actually being praised by 6-time world champion Gabriel Varga. And that was actually really nice because it was something which I received at more of a low point in terms of my self-esteem. I was like, you know what, I don't think I'm good enough yet. I don't think I've gained the skills that I wanted to gain. And then he told me that I looked like a high-level professional, which was very, uplifting coming from a guy who's as good as him. So let's get straight into it because I know you guys just want to get the results. I like to get the results. I don't like to watch YouTube videos for like 6 hours. So first one was offense. And I focused on 2 main things here. The first one was technique. I needed to perfect a lot of the things which I was taught wrong. Going to a Thai boxing gym, especially in the boxing aspect, they're not the best. You want to learn boxing, learn from a boxer. I started to learn the techniques again. I started to really start to maximize my output and maximize my defense at the same time. If you guys are interested in this doc, you can find this in the link below. It is going to be posted on my school community for free. And you can also see that there's a link here called Perfect Technique, where I show you guys how to perfect each and every single technique, coming from the boxing aspect to the elbows, to the knees, and also to the kicks. So if that's something that you're interested in, go down to the link. You can join very easily. The second thing that I started to focus on was my setups. Now that you've got the technique, I felt as though, okay, now I need to actually be successful in using them, because there's no point in knowing how to throw a cross if you can't use the cross. So I decided to start learning my setups. I decided to start putting the techniques and the skills which I've gained, which I've newly gained, or which I've newly relearned, into action. Then I moved on to defense. So now I've learned how to actually throw punches effectively. Now it's time for me to protect myself from taking punches. And for me, this is 60% of the game because nobody's scared to throw a punch. Everybody can hit a bag. You can go to a bag, you can punch it all day, you can hit pads all day. You know, if the pad man's just standing there and he's telling you to throw a jab cross hook, you can throw a jab cross hook all day and you can feel very, very confident. The issue is when people start throwing punches back at you, that's when the fear starts to kick in and that's when you kind of start going down the drain. And that's the biggest problem that I was having. So I decided to fix that. There was two things which I mainly did. The first one was that I started to learn at least one defensive technique for every single strike, whether it was a knee, whether it was a long knee, whether it was a front elbow, whether it was a side elbow, whether it was a kick, a round kick to the body or to the head or to the leg or inside leg kicks. Every single technique that you can think of in terms of striking, I learned at least one defensive move for them all. Then that quickly developed into two, and then into three, and then into four, and etc. etc. Then I started to drill. So this was the second thing that I did. I started to drill these defensive moves because what I found was that in this case, more equals more. The more I do, the more reps I do, the better I'm going to get. With any skill I found, the more you do, the better you will get. Whether it is heft, whether it is sales, whether it is painting, whatever it might be. You know, if it's a skill, the more you do, obviously correctly, you have to do it right, but the more you do, the better you will get. And for me, I just started to rep it out. I started to rep these out like 2-3 times a day. You don't have to do that much, but obviously that's something that I was very passionate about, and that's what I did. And what I used to do is I would take 3 rounds and I would do it for 3 minutes and I would just defend. So there was no strikes, there was no counters, there was nothing. It was literally stand there for 3 rounds, for 3 minutes and just defend. Really drill into your head. And I really wanted to drill into my head how to defend every single one of these techniques so that they became very, very crisp and so that they became kind of like second nature, just like walking, just like drinking water, you know what I mean? And the last thing that I did was conditioning. So I realized that, or at least I've learned now how to throw a punch. I know that I can attack people. I know that I can fight offensively. And I know that I can defend myself. I can defend myself from a punch. But you also need to understand that you can only throw so much. Eventually, you will miss. Like, eventually you will miss. If you watch professional fights, there is a very large percentage of punches that they completely miss altogether. And these are the highest of the high in terms of boxing, kickboxing, whatever it might be. So you will miss punches and you are only able to defend as much as obviously you are capable of defending. Like, you can't defend everything. You'll never have 100% success rate in defending. I understood that. So I realized that, you know what, if I can only land so much and I can only defend so much, eventually I'm going to get hit. Which means that if my body's not ready to take the shot or to take the impact, then I'm going to fold like a lawn chair. So what I decided to do was to train my core 4, or what I like to call the core 4. I wanted to train my shins so that I could attack and so that I could defend, especially when it comes to checking, whether it's high checks or low kick checks. I needed to condition my quads so that I could take those low kicks. And coming from a boxing background, that was really important because I used to get kicked in the legs a lot. And then the third one was to condition my arms so that I can take round kicks to the arms, because if you get kicked in the arms, your arm will go dead and then you can't punch anymore, and I understood that. And the last one was to condition my core, and that one is probably the most important because generally speaking, people get folded by body shots, whether it's teeps, round kicks, hooks to the body, whatever it might be. So those are the 4 things that I decided to start working on conditioning. And now the result of this, and this is probably what you are here for, this is why I would be here, is that after a 4-year layoff, after only having shadow boxed and used a wall and a bag, I went back to the gym, and on my first day I was able to stand toe to toe with an amateur world champion. Now it shows the effectiveness of the system. It shows how effective this system was in terms of building my skill set, which is something that I wasn't able to do when I was actually training at the gym. So there's going to be a link down below for one-to-one coaching. I'm taking on about 5 more people. If that is something which you are curious about, go down to the link, click the link and you can apply to join, and I'll see you there.